Good afternoon. It is time for the Postgame show. I'm Elijah Campbell. Jay Phillips will be in. He's not here right now, but he will be here soon. He had some obligations he had to take care of a little before the show. It ran over, so I'll take care of that until he comes in, about 10 minutes or so. We got a lot to get into today. Shane Beamer made sure that we had a lot to get into today because he made a really big announcement, or at least an answer to a question he was asked yesterday while in Florence. Also got a lot to get into. David Cloninger at 3:30 is going to join us. There's definitely going to be a Rick Camp joke made in there, or an allusion. Something I was introduced to. Not obviously not alive during the 80s, so didn't see a lot of 80s baseball. So I learned who Rick Camp was today. We'll talk about that with David. Gamecock football, big baseball series against Georgia this weekend. They are in action tonight in Rock Hill against Winthrop. And then in the 4 o'clock hour, our man Ben Portnoy, we talk about the business of college athletics all the time. And with, the House versus NCAA settlement basically getting bigger. That number that we hear about a settlement, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Ben's been all over that in terms of reporting. He's going to join us at 4:15. A whole lot to get into, but we'll go ahead and start with the big news that Shane Beamer discussed yesterday. And going into spring practice, one of the biggest things that was discussed, or the things to watch for, was how the quarterback competition was going to go between Robbie Ashford, the transfer from Oregon and Auburn, coming in to compete for the starting job with Lenoris Sellers, who was a true freshman last year, appeared in a few games, went 4 for 4 with 2 touchdowns and against Furman in the second half, and then ran for a pretty big touchdown against Vanderbilt in that game. Dual threat guy, the presumed starter. He took, from my understanding, a good bit of the starting reps during the spring, and had a pretty solid spring game. Well, when asked about it yesterday, Shane Beamer made it somewhat official that going into fall camp, quote-unquote fall camp, that Lenoris Sellers will be QB1.
I'll tell you guys what I told Lenoris and all the quarterbacks coming out of spring practice. Lenoris is our starting quarterback. But just like all of our positions, that we will continue to compete at all positions. So I told Robbie Ashford the moment I say that at a Gamecock Club event, the headline is going to be Beamer names Lenoris Sellers starting quarterback. Lenoris is the starting quarterback coming out of spring. And now, like I told Lenoris and like I told Robbie did a great job during spring practice along with our other quarterbacks. Lenoris did a great job, and I expect Lenoris to continue to compete and continue to earn that position as well. You guys know from being here, going into 2022, nobody thought that Nicky Mamori and DQ Smith were going to be starting safeties because we had 2 seniors that they were behind, and we got into week 2 and they became starters, so it's the same thing. We don't all of a sudden name someone, Debo Williams, as our starting linebacker coming out of spring practice, but he needs to have a great summer to continue to be the starting linebacker, so that's where we are. And I had those conversations with those guys the Monday after the spring game.
So there you have it. Lenoris Sellers, after spring camp or spring practices going into the summer, is the starting quarterback for the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, this isn't very surprising. I think going into the season, no one found it, would find it shocking if on August 31st, when foot meets leather against Old Dominion, that Lenoris Sellers is going to be the starting quarterback. That's not surprising. There was going to be a competition, we knew, but it's not surprising that Lenoris Sellers is going to be the starter. I think what is a little surprising to me is that Shane did publicly go ahead and say that Lenoris Sellers is the starting quarterback heading into the summer. And I think it's a really good sign, mostly because he's got that public confidence in Lenoris. Now, clearly there's going to be more competition when they come back to campus after the summer, and they're practicing in August. So it's not set in stone, but for him to publicly say that Lenoris Sellers is the starter right now has to make Gamecock fans feel a little excited about the ability Lenoris has to take that step forward, right, into being a full-time starting quarterback in the SEC. Robbie Ashford has played at 2 different places that it's big-time college football. Yeah, the Pac-12 is no longer with us, but he played at Oregon, a very lucrative athletic department with a very proud football history and on a team that was really good. And then playing at Auburn in the SEC and getting some starts, some valuable reps, a guy who's taken a lot of snaps in the Southeastern Conference. To know publicly that Shane saw those two play and LaNorris was able to separate himself has to make you feel really good. Now, Shane could have yesterday said, hey, both guys are playing really, really well. We'll make our decision a little closer to week 1 against Old Dominion. A lot of coaches do that. Most coaches, actually, when there are two quarterbacks competing for one spot, aren't willing to lay all their cards out on the table, right? They're not willing to say, hey, this is the guy that we're going to lean with, that we're going to rock with going into the first game against Old Dominion or whoever it is that you're playing, right? A lot of coaches don't like doing that. Some of them can get really weird about that. But Shane publicly said that LaNorris is the number one guy, meaning that LaNorris was able to separate himself. And that's the one thing you wanted him to do, is if you were wanting LaNorris to be QB1 going into the season, you'd like to see that in the spring when he got his first opportunity to create some separation, that he would take that opportunity and create that separation. And I think by Shane yesterday, pretty much unprompted, saying that LaNorris Sellers will be the starting quarterback going into fall, quote-unquote, fall camp, that has to tell you, as Jay Phillips joins us now, welcome back, Jay, that I think Shane saw that LaNorris is able to create some separation.
Yeah, I like what you said, too, about the fact that Robbie has had some high-level experience, and this is what they've seen. And you don't want to make that sound like a knock. And I appreciated how Shane said what he did last night in Florence when he said, I told Robbie, look, the headline's going to be that you're not the number one guy. I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, the headline's going to be LaNorris is starting quarterback.
He prepared him for it.
Yeah. My gut tells me that Robbie had an idea of this all along. This goes back, again, to you and me having Shane on this program, the week before Christmas, give or take? Mm-hmm. Forget exactly, but in December, after the regular season, that's what I remember, telling us LaNorris is our guy, and that LaNorris has won over the locker room. The guys love him. Dowell loves him. He loves Dowell. And I think that was really crucial for Shane, was the relationship that LaNorris and Dowell were going to build. And so when you're recruiting Robbie Ashford, and especially in today's world, people know what's up. You know, you're not hiding anything from anybody. It's easy enough to call somebody and ask questions.
Well, Robbie was in a situation at Auburn where he knew what was up, where the coach who brought him there got fired. The coach came in and brought in a quarterback with him.
Right.
That was a situation where he knew what's up and he knew it was going to be an uphill battle. So, I mean, Robbie knew what he was getting into, but he wanted or at least wanted the opportunity.
So, and he's gotten that. And mm-hmm. I think one of the things we've talked about, knock on wood, this is football. It's violent. People get hurt. Sometimes you get hurt for a series. Sometimes you get hurt for a game. Sometimes you get hurt for longer. You still need that daily motivation to continue to make yourself better. So there's a lot of things about it. But, I think all along, everybody in that room knew that. And they see the same thing. Here's the thing. They see more than we do, Elijah. That's the thing about mm-hmm. it. But we had this idea all through last year. Like, man, they love LaNorris. I mean, the only reason, y'all, that you didn't see more of LaNorris is just that you had Spencer Rattler. And you really were doing all you could, to win those games. There was just South Carolina last year, unfortunately, was rarely in a position where you could give your backup quarterback meaningful opportunity. You were just either behind or, trying to just, fight like hell to win a couple of games late, especially. So, but it's, and I guess enough time has passed now. What are we, 2 weeks after the spring game, 3 weeks after the spring game? To say, all right, let's let everything breathe, and this is our number one,
and have some honest reflection too, right? Because like these guys, they film every snap, every rep of every practice. They document everything that goes on in these practices. They take everything into consideration when it comes to deciding who's playing where and who's starting, and all the minute details that go into building a roster and a depth chart. Even though one day we're going to get that depth chart, Jay. One day we're going to get that depth chart, and we're not going to shut up about it. One day we're going to get it. But they have all the information they need, and I think after a couple of weeks, now that spring practice is over, this was a good time to do it, to instill some public confidence in Lenoris.
I agree. And again, offensive player of the spring, all those kind of accolades that went along with it. We've got some sound from Shane that we'll let you hear on that. Have you already played? I don't know if I got here.
I did play Shane talking about Lenoris being
QB1. You already played cut number 7?
That's right.
Okay.
Magic cut number 7.
For those of you who can't see us, and I know most of you are listening and not watching on YouTube, yours truly was just a couple of minutes late today. I do apologize.
You did beat your time, though. You did text me right as we were getting on. As the show was starting, be there within 10 minutes, and you came in at 3:06.
Yeah, I had
It's impressive.
Thank you. I did what I could. I had a meeting at 1:30 that I thought could run long, and sometimes these things happen.
Yep.
But Elijah was prepared.
Always.
Yeah. Always.
See, kids, like a good backup quarterback, you got to stay ready, so you never have to get ready.
Oh, no, you're far more than a backup quarterback, sir, I assure you. David Cloninger will be joining us coming up in just a little bit. David and I had some fun this morning. Debate. It wasn't really a debate. So I asked David late. We had someone scheduled at 3:30, and then they were unable to fulfill that, which is fine. I won't hold it against that person. But I called David and said, hey, I need you to come out of the bullpen. And then I joked with him and said, we're going to call you Rick Camp. And those of you of a certain age, like me, raising my hand, will remember Rick Camp as, one of those fun-loving, good old boy relievers for the Braves back in the 1980s. And I said, Rick Camp hit the third most famous home run in Braves history. And if you're most important, I think I said. But the first being Hank hitting number 715.
Naturally.
The second, David Justice's solo home run in Game 6 of 95, because the final score was 1-0.
Proved to loom large.
Yes. And then 3 was Rick Camp in the 18th inning on July 4th of 1985 against the New York Mets, a game that the Mets had taken the lead in the top of the 18th inning. You heard me right, kids. And Rick hit a home run. And the thing about Rick Camp is, again, he's a reliever, National League, 1980s. I think Rick's career batting average was like less than .050. But this home run, it was remarkable, man. I mean, it's
like 1 for 50.
So I said it was the third, and then David said, what about Soler in the World Series a couple years ago? So I agreed with him, and we moved Rick's to 4th.
I think the Jorge Soler one was so big, not because of it being a deciding game of the World Series, but because the ball still hasn't landed.
It was a magnificent home run.
Top 5 home runs I've ever heard in my life where it sounded like a shotgun.
It really it was a remarkable home run. It was. And it did, help seal the deal. So there's that. But David will be joining us coming up at the bottom of the hour. He heard what Shane had to say last night. We'll get into a little bit of that with him, what he thinks of the final moves by Lamont Paris to solidify what I think is going to be a very competitive roster. Again, how competitive in a loaded Southeastern Conference, I do not know. But I think Lamont is building something strong. And he's got some good kids in there. And we'll, of course, get into a little Carolina baseball with David as well. Our good friend Ben Portnoy, now covering the business of college athletics, will join us in the 4 o'clock hour. He's been doing a lot now that he's at the Sports Business Journal with what's going on with this House versus NCAA potential settlement, some of the ramifications in terms of long-range planning for college athletics. And I'll try to squeeze in a little of what he's following as well. It's not really the business side, but this ACC, FSU, Clemson thing, what kind of effect that's having on things, all that for you coming up. And we're a little bit early today, getting out early because of Carolina baseball. So lots more to do on this Tuesday edition of the Postgame Show. 19 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. David Cloninger coming up in about 10 or 12 minutes. Ben Portnoy next hour. Gamecock baseball tonight from Rock Hill. David will be excited about that. Heading back home to cover the Gamecocks tonight. You know, he's from Rock Hill. You might not have known that. Well, you might not have. You've not been here.
Actually, that is news to me. You know, I think I've heard it once.
Yeah.
I think he has discussed.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't talk much about being from Rock Hill, which is odd.
Unfortunate.
I don't know why.
And not a scent of sarcasm in there at all.
No.
Let me guess. Oh, okay, let me guess. Let me guess the high school. Northwestern.
You got it.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, good. That's like one of 2 high schools I know there. So.
No, you know 3. I mean, there's
South Point. I know South Point.
And Rock Hill.
Okay, there's a Rock Hill High School.
There is.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Very nice.
Oh yeah.
So I know 3.
And let's see. Nation Ford is in York County.
Not to be confused with Nations
Ford,
Nations
which
side
is a road in Charlotte. I think that's how that works. Anyway, or maybe it's Nation Ford in Charlotte. I don't know. David's from Rock Hill, and he'll be here soon. And Carolina baseball's in Rock Hill tonight against Winthrop. 5:45.
Nice.
Again, early start tonight.
They should let David throw the first pitch. In a Rick Camp jersey.
Oh my God! Actually, he told me he wanted to be Gene Garber, which is cool. Gene was pretty good too. Gene was one of those submarine dudes.
Oh, I love a good submarine pitcher.
Yeah.
Shout out Chad Bradford.
Dude, if David Cloninger would wear a Rick Camp jersey and throw out the first pitch somewhere, I would go and see that. Then I would leave. I'd be like, this
because there's nothing else.
I would buy the ticket. I would buy the beer. I would buy the hot dog. And I'd be like, nothing that can happen from the rest of this time forward can be as good as what I just saw.
The game would have peaked.
Yeah. We do have some, I guess, tough Carolina men's basketball news today. After a few really nice days, Trevor Noah.
That would be news if he was committed to South Carolina. That would be news because A, no way he has any eligibility. B, didn't know he could ball like that.
What's he doing now, by the way? Anyway, let's come back to it. Trent Noah of Harlan or Baxter, Kentucky, Harlan High School, has announced that he has been released from his national letter of intent to play basketball at South Carolina. He released the following statement earlier today. In fact, just very recently here, it would seem. To begin, I would like to express my gratitude to the South Carolina basketball staff and fan base for embracing me as a Gamecock. After much thought, prayer, and extensive conversation with my family, I requested and was granted a release from my national letter of intent with the University of South Carolina. I will be reopening my recruitment with hopes of pursuing basketball opportunities closer to home. I sincerely appreciate Coach Parris' genuine investment in me, both on and off the court, and his compassion and professionalism during this process. Please respect my decision. Thank you. He was not ever really recruited by John Calipari. Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio, who's very well connected up there, says that UK, Louisville, and Tennessee will be among expected schools involved. This after he had chosen Carolina over Dayton, St. Louis, Stanford, Western Kentucky, Seton Hall, and others, Butler included. This kid can score. He's a straight up shooting guard scorer, and one of the best in Kentucky high school basketball history. So this is a tough one, Elijah. I think this kid was going to be able to come in and play. And before I get you to analyze this from a pure hoops perspective, let me also kind of throw out with a mildly rhetorical question of, do we expect this to be Kentucky? Is that what may be at work here with the coaching change, that a guy like Coach Pope would be a lot more interested in a kid like this relative to Coach Cal?
Oh, yeah, because A, Mark Pope gets it, right? He played for Kentucky. He won a national championship as a player at Kentucky. He still has, obviously, very strong feelings about the University of Kentucky and what that basketball team means to that town, to the entire state, right? Like most kids that play high school basketball in Kentucky dream of being a Wildcat. So Mark Pope understands that. So I think there's a good angle for him to be able to get a kid like this. And look, if you look at the basketball standpoint in terms of a Mark Pope coach team and a player like this is a kid who shattered the three-point shooting record books in Kentucky high school basketball. Mark Pope was the head coach last year of one of only 4 teams that shot more three-pointers than they did twos.
Okay.
Only 4 teams in college basketball did that. Mark Pope's BYU team was one of those. It's very modern. They spread the floor, and you can't have enough shooters in this offense. And you know what? Like no team has ever said, you know what? I think we have enough three-point shooters. The same way no CEO has ever said, you know what? I think our company has enough money.
Right.
No, they don't say that, right? So after getting, Kerr Kriisa and Kobe Brea in the transfer portal, it makes perfect sense to add another three-point shooter off your bench to be able to come out and shoot the lights out. And I think he fits in perfectly with an offense like Kentucky's. So the basketball fit makes sense. The geographical fit makes sense. It makes sense with what Trent Noah said in his post on Twitter about wanting to pursue basketball opportunities closer to home. Certainly, Harlan County, Kentucky is a lot closer to Kentucky than South Carolina is. Makes a ton of sense. I would be shocked if he went to Louisville or Tennessee like Matt Jones suggested. And even in the tweet after that from Matt Jones, he did say Trent Noah can play and has improved a ton even in the last year, being a fellow 13th regioner. I think he is perfect to join Pope's squad, and I think he will. Yeah. So it has Kentucky right now.
It would hurt, I think, a lot more if Trent Noah were to begin matriculating at University of Tennessee. That would,
oh boy!
At that point, that would be
for both Kentucky and South Carolina.
Yeah, that'd be a real gut punch. Absolutely. So look, I get it, and I think Matt makes a good point there. This was somebody. Look, I'm not bashing Cal. Look, they needed to do more, but I have said for years, and you and I talked about this. It just feels like John Calipari lost sight, or maybe never really had great sight to begin with, of that kid. Now, you can't fill your team up with that kid when you can go get the best player in Chicago or the best player from the Bronx.
Raid McDonald's All-American rosters.
Or, a kid, from Toronto, the best kid in Toronto. I get it. You're going to, if you can get them, you're going to get them, and you should. But you should certainly, in my opinion, supplement at a school like Kentucky with kids that dream of it and that will work their tail off for you and for the school and for the word on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey. And it's my belief, and I see a lot of it, that Cal just kind of lost sight of that. I realize the state of Kentucky doesn't always produce that kind of talent. I get it, but when it does, or even if moderately close, again, bring them on board.
Make them transfer out.
Yeah, and see, if
they don't see the floor, right?
Right. Like if they're just not going to, you can tell. And so, at that point, sure, then they'll go wherever. But bring that passion. That's what I'm talking about. That desire, that want to, that dream, because it's Kentucky basketball. I get it.
Every kid loves it.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. So, you wish the kid the best. My only criticism of him and anybody else doing this these days is the use of the sentence, "Please respect my decision." I would just assume they just take that out. I'm kind of
that can be assumed now.
That's a little tongue in cheek, but I just you don't need to say we will. And you know what, to this young man and any other kids like that say the people that don't, what they can do. So
kick rocks.
Yeah, don't worry too much about it. Good luck, and we'll come back around to this a little bit later on. I'll ask you more, Elijah, of what Lamont needs to do, because we thought as of yesterday the roster was full, and now there's a slot that is open. David Cloninger will join us on the other side of the break, covering the Gamecocks for the Charleston Post and Courier. We'll try to get as much as we can for football, basketball, and baseball in with DC. You're listening to the Postgame Show. You know, way too often, guys, especially after a certain age, maybe any age, just won't go to the doctor when they're feeling off. I'm going to tough it out. It's no big deal. It'll go away eventually. They just don't want to talk about it, maybe. Maybe that's one of the reasons. Don't be that guy. When you don't feel like you, whatever it might be, you need to see a medical professional. You need to see Dr. Dan Balknight and his team at the men's clinic. They can get you to feeling better. They can get you to feeling like the old days. They are experts in healthcare for men, and they're dedicated to making you feel like yourself again, the way you want to, the way you used to. There could be a lot of factors in there. You'll get a great individual consultation with Dan, who is a fantastic person. He and his team really just want to take care of you. Get a free consultation, set up an appointment, 803-875-MENS, and learn more online at themensclinicsc.com.
And he is at the deep left. Heat goes back. It is gone. Holy cow. Oh, my goodness. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Rick Kemp. Rick Kemp. I don't believe it.
It's good stuff. Nearly 40 years ago. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. That was Rick Camp, bottom of the 18th, 1985. That was the great John Sterling on the call before he had moved on to become the voice of the New York Yankees. He was part of the Braves TV and radio crew down south. And mentioned earlier that David Cloninger kind enough to come out of the bullpen for us today after a guest cancellation. And I said we'd call him Rick Camp, but he said he wanted to be Gene Garber. But Gene Garber didn't hit a home run that exciting, DC, so you get Rick Camp.
Yeah, well, Gene Garber struck out Pete Rose, when he was going for the National League hitting streak record.
Yes,
so,
he did.
You take your points, In 1985, hey, great season. Finished second in the division that year. We won't have to discuss that they finished 80 and 82 and still finished second. Because second is second. But, hey, whatever.
Yes. Jim, I think Pete Rose is still hacked off at Gene Garber for striking him out that night, man. It's almost like Pete wanted him to throw him.
Pete hacked off at a lot of things.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mostly people, finding out all the crap he got away with that went unreported back then. So,
let's start you, Dave, with the breaking news, and that is Trent Noah getting out of his NLI with South Carolina. Looks like he is headed to Kentucky. How much of a surprise was this to you?
You really think so? You think he might go to Kentucky? You think? Yeah, obviously, guys, when John Calipari, who never showed much interest in Trent Noah, went to Arkansas, and they got Mark Pope, who is a Kentucky guy, not from there, but obviously played there, it seemed like the writing might be on the wall. He's been filling up his roster right now. He's only got one other Kentucky native on it. So I thought that this was a distinct possibility, so I'm not really surprised that it happened. He's a Kentucky kid. He grew up about 3 hours from Lexington, big-time high school career, and you could tell it's like, well, he didn't really show much interest the first time around. That has certainly changed, so it is not surprising in the least. South Carolina thought it had a complete basketball roster 2 days ago when Jamari Thomas committed. Now they've got one opening. But the good thing is they've still got plenty of options on if they want to fill that one roster spot.
And, David, do you think they would – if they're going to go fill it, you're thinking like for like in terms of a kid who's, that kind of gunslinger from outside?
Well, you hope, Jay, but obviously if you're going for a high school kid, most of those are already signed up by now. So I think you do look in the transfer portal first and see, well, is there somebody maybe that can fill that 6'6", 6'5", small forward role who can shoot from outside? Obviously shooting outside is a major part of Lamont Paris's system, so anybody that they recruit is going to have to be pretty reliable from three. But it just depends on what they feel they need in terms of height, because Trent was going to play.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But, recruiting's a funny thing. And the window is shut for the transfer portal in terms of getting into it, but players can still come out of it. So I'm sure there are plenty of guys that are getting their phones lit up right about now.
And then for more positive Gamecock news, Shane Beamer, shed some light on the QB1 situation, that it's going to be Lenora Sellers going into the summer and quote-unquote fall camp. What is your takeaway from that? You think it's, a good sign of public confidence in Shane to announce that Lenore's going to be the starter going into the summer?
Well, sure, guys. I'm the one that asked the question. It was like, well, Linares is here tonight in Florence. This was last night. Any grand announcements coming? He said, well, Linares was our starter coming out of spring practice, which sounds profound at first. But then you think, well, yeah, they already knew that. He took every meaningful snap. He was a starter for one of the teams. Robbie Ashford was a starter for the other, and that's generally what you look at. So it really wasn't anything that anybody didn't know. It's not like there was a true battle going on, but the fact is, he did go ahead and put a definite word on it. But as he said, out of spring practice. Now, what does that mean? Some folks said, well, I guess he's a starter going into preseason camp. Kind of, sort of, but there's always the asterisk unless something were to happen. Of course, you don't want to mention the real negative thing that could happen, so it won't. But it could be during summer workouts, when those guys are out there throwing on to their receivers. Coaches get reports on all that stuff. So they'll see how all that goes once it gets to August 1st when the team reports back for preseason camp. But nothing surprising to hear him say, yeah, Linares is the starter right now, but it's still going to be an ongoing competition. So it's, just part of the vein of college football when you have something like this and you go ahead and kind of remove all the mystery. But I doubt that if this thing stays until the middle of August, which I fully expect it to, there probably wouldn't be any kind of formal announcement then. You would just know about 2 weeks in, Linares has been the first team guy the whole time, so why wouldn't he be out there August 31st?
Talking to David Cloninger on the beat for the Post and Courier. Staying with football, DC. We haven't spoken with you since the spring game. I know you've had plenty of write-ups about this, but with a little bit of reflection, one of the biggest things that Elijah and I have talked about is this is going to be an incredibly different offense. I mean, whole new running back room. Obviously, the quarterbacks, almost everything about the offense. From your perspective, A, what'd you learn? And B, how much more is there to learn?
Well, of course, you do talk about the running game, and it certainly was, a relief, frankly, to see the guys that they got coming in this year, because last year they knew that they had no running game to speak of. There was a lot of hope, like, maybe this will be all right, but they knew that there wasn't anything proven there, and there wasn't a lot in terms of pass production to rely on. Now you have that, but of course we still didn't learn much about what the running game will look like because Rocket Sanders didn't play in the spring game. Therefore, he's going to be there, but you also don't know how effective he's going to be. He is coming off an injury-marred season and 2 surgeries, so we'll see how that works. But you do have past performance to rely on. And of course, last year, Dowell Loggins came in, a new guy coming in. Is like, well, if nothing else, I've got the right arm of Spencer Rattler. And that was great. I mean, I know they finished 5-7. I thought he did a tremendous job considering the limitations he had elsewhere. But this year you don't have that. Right. You've got a guy who you really like. You love his athleticism. In terms of running around in the pocket, Lenoris Sellers can make that a 10-yard gain, while Spencer Rattler probably could have made it a 4-yard. Nothing negative about Rattler's mobility, but it's a case of Rattler would stay in there and try as hard as he could to make the passing play happen before he took off. Linares will be able to read that a lot quicker and say, if I can take this now, I'm going to go get it. So there's going to be a lot to work on. He's still a freshman. I think he's only thrown, 7 varsity passes? It's under 10, I believe. So you're going to have to work through that, but you have a lot of options there. You addressed your needs at wide receiver. You went and got some stretch the field guys to complement who you'd already brought in. And from the offensive lineman standpoint, you've got bodies. Right. You had bodies last year. It's just they were all hurt. Yeah. But the good thing is, Shane Beamer said yesterday in Florence, he wants all the players to kind of get away during May. That's the last time that they're going to have to get away from preseason and the season. And he said, but probably about a fifth of the roster is still on campus in May working out. And almost all of those guys are offensive linemen. That's a very good thing to hear, especially with the injuries that dogged that position last year. So you look at it and you feel maybe cautiously optimistic would be the term, because last year was like, they did about as well as they could considering their offensive line was hurt the whole season and they had no running game. They still did okay. So you just hope that, okay, now you got a running game and you hope that you can stay healthy. What do you got this year?
Yeah. And got about a minute here for you, David. On the diamond, they take 2 of 3 from Missouri. Should Gamecock fans be more excited about the bats breaking out here in the last week or so, or more concerned about the starting pitching?
That's always give and take, isn't it, Elijah? So it's one of those where, you really like it that I think they scored close to 60 runs over the past 6 games. That's really nice. But when your starters went to a weekend series and none of them got to the 4th inning, that's real concerning. So you just kind of hope that it all balances out. You're obviously playing a Georgia team that loves to swing it this weekend. Not only do they have Charlie Condon, who's got 33 homers, I believe, but they got 3 or 4 other guys who got about 10 to 15 homers apiece. So it's a homer-happy lineup. You got to hope that your guys will be there, because you just can't extend your bullpen like that and hope the offense will bail them out every time. But you're just hoping that, you can't win the game without runs scored. So that's good to see. But you might be able to, I'll go ahead and tell you, maybe bring a book if you're going to the games this weekend, because you might be in there for a few innings, some of those 15-13 affairs that we've come to love so well.
Yeah. I have 5 seconds. Where's the game tonight, David?
It's in Rock Hill, South Carolina, a little slice of heaven.
There you go.
And you should all go up there, if nothing else, to see the world's biggest batter's eye.
Ooh.
On any baseball field in America. You'll be able to see that if you go up to Winthrop Ballpark tonight.
There you go. He's David Cloninger of the Post and Courier. Have fun, sir. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Post-game show continues. I didn't have time to tease this for you guys. Welcome back into the postgame show. We were right up against the break when we said goodbye to David Cloninger. But I have two quick things I'm going to try to fit in that sometimes get into the absurdity of just sports and life. One is happening as we speak across the street from us. John Blau, who is the Clemson beat writer for the Post and Courier, is in the Senate right now. One senator has objected to South Carolina's NIL law because it will not allow athletes to officially promote guns. Another, John says, and I'll read verbatim from his tweet, asks if the Catholic diocese could sponsor the Cowboys because they invented the Hail Mary, they being the Catholic Church, I suppose. He calls the Cowboys Satan's team and says they need prayers.
Might be alluding to Roger Staubach, maybe. I think Roger Staubach invented.
Oh, okay. I was thinking he meant like the prayer, the Hail Mary, not the Roger Staubach. Okay.
That predates Roger Staubach.
It does.
I'm afraid.
It does.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Roger Staubach through the original Hail Mary.
But the Cowboys, are in Texas, so there's that. This is a South Carolina law. John also says that one senator said, if you're telling me it's okay for the quarterback to stand up and say, quote, you need a Glock, I don't believe that. I think right now, NIL rules prohibit student athletes from endorsing alcohol, tobacco, and in states where, say, marijuana is legal, they can't promote that. And guns. And there probably are a few other things in it, but those are sort of some big red flags. I don't think it's anything that's anti, First or Second Amendment when it comes to that. It's more about just having some parameters as best they possibly can. And quite honestly, I don't believe that there's going to be a senator. Now, listen, senators can filibuster, so I would hope that whoever is
no
saying
doubt about that,
and I don't know how serious they are about that, but let's hope that this needs to get passed. And let me tell y'all, by the way, the legislative session in South Carolina ends Thursday. This needs to get done. Mm-hmm. And now I'm not kidding. This needs to get done. Now, I am of the impression that it's going to. But depending on how someone, how serious someone gets, I don't know. And having worked in that chamber, having worked across the street, still being connected to a lot of people who work across the street, there are very few surprises. But I would hate to see this get hung up over something. Again, the Hail Mary Cowboys thing, that's just somebody being funny. I don't know about the other part. I don't know. I'm going to find out. I can't right this second, but I'm going to be communicating with some people I know over there and see, like, hey, was this serious?
Sending some texts.
I don't know if it's serious or not. So I'm not judging. All right. I'm observing. But I am telling you that the session ends on Thursday. And here it is Tuesday afternoon, and the Senate hadn't done this yet.
And right here joking about it. And
I don't know. One is if the Senate responds, in a certain way, they have to send it back to the House. I mean, where they're kind of running out of time. But anyway, we'll see. The other absurdity, completely different topic now. I don't know if y'all heard about this or not, but Dave & Buster's had announced a couple of weeks ago that they were going to start letting people bet inside Dave & Buster's on like skee ball and Pop-A-Shot. And that they had worked or they were working with a company called Lucra Sports to place wagers on arcade games on the Dave & Buster's app. But now, as you might not have been surprised by, there are lawmakers across the country that are saying, yeah, hold on a second. A state representative in Illinois, Daniel Diedick, filed a bill last week that's designed to prohibit family amusement establishments, think about that for a second, please, from facilitating wagering on amusement games. Family amusement establishments. Listen, here's the thing.
It's a good way to lose your family in amusement.
What is more, I often, listen, again, I am not anti-gambling. I don't gamble. because usually when you gamble, you lose. And I like keeping my money where if I'm going to lose it, at least I'm going to lose it on something I did. But, like, what's more of a degenerate? The guy who bets on, like, the Hall of Fame game in Canton every summer? Or somebody who might actually want to drop a dime on some kid playing skee ball?
The skee ball thing.
Right? Like, I mean, if
That's
you want to
hilarious.
lose your ass watching some kid play skee ball at Dave and Buster's, and you know what, man? You get what you deserve. Oh, hour 2 coming up. You know, speaking of your money, let me tell you a great place to keep more of your money, even in the big banks. Who is that? I am talking about Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. Unlike the big banks, when you save at Palmetto Citizens, your money stays in the Midlands. They don't pay stockholders. They don't loan or invest out of state or out of the country. Instead, they use their dollars and your dollars to help your neighbors, your local businesses, and local charitable organizations, whether it's a checking account, savings account, credit cards, car loans, mortgages, home equity lines, student loans, anything you can do at the big banks, you can also do it at Palmetto Citizens, and you can do it with lower rates and fewer fees. And the good news is they know what's up. They've been doing it since 1936. My wife and I are customers of Palmetto Citizens. We use the Millwood branch. They've got 13 others all across the Midlands of South Carolina. Apply online or learn more at palmettocitizens.org. And remember, you can achieve your potential. 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Second hour of the postgame show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia, South Carolina, alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Our good friend Ben Portnoy, formerly on the beat covering the Gamecocks for the state newspaper, now covering the business of college athletics for the Sports Business Journal. He'll be with us coming up in about 15 minutes. Thanks again to David Cloninger for joining us last half hour. We touched on this with DC, but for those of you just tuning in today and you haven't heard this, there is some breaking news, and it's disappointing news for South Carolina men's basketball. Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, high school kid Trent Noah, who had been committed to South Carolina for the last several months and had signed his national letter of intent, today was granted a release from that NLI, and he will reopen his recruitment. He released a statement this afternoon, just a little while ago, and I will read it as follows. To begin, I would like to express my gratitude to the South Carolina basketball staff and fan base for embracing me as a Gamecock. After much thought, prayer, and extensive conversation with my family, I requested and was granted a release from my national letter of intent with the University of South Carolina. I will be reopening my recruitment with hopes of pursuing basketball opportunities closer to home. I sincerely appreciate Coach Parris' genuine investment in me, both on and off the court, and his compassion and professionalism during this process. Please respect my decision. Thank you. He had originally been recruited by schools like Dayton, St. Louis, Stanford. Boy, it's hard to turn Stanford down when they want you. I tell you what, that's a school, man. Butler, Seton Hall, amongst others. Kentucky really did not show interest in him. He had been committed to South Carolina since last fall. So obviously he had a whole other basketball season that he played, Elijah. And while there still seemingly was no real interest from John Calipari and his staff at Kentucky, that has now changed with Coach Cal moving to Fayetteville.
That's right. And with Coach Mark Pope there at Kentucky now, someone who I think you can reasonably say understands maybe the culture of Kentucky basketball more than John Calipari ever did, solely because of his playing days, playing at Kentucky, and now being really in tune. He's still really close friends with apparently all of his teammates from the national championship team he was on, and now we're a year removed from Reed Sheppard being arguably their best offensive player this past year, who was a kid that grew up in Kentucky. But look, Noah had an incredible senior year. Trent Noah, took his team to the state championship game, and of course, the Sweet 16 in Kentucky is a really big deal, right? Like Kentucky is, I think, the only state now that doesn't have classifications in basketball. So when you're playing for a Kentucky state championship, you're not playing for like the 2A or the 3A state title. You're playing for the legitimate championship of the state of Kentucky because they all play in one really big tournament, right? Took him to the championship game and eviscerated some records, and to give you a hint at just how good of a run he had, scored 129 points in the 4 games. The average, which is 32.3 points per game. It's the 4th most in any Sweet 16 in Kentucky history, and it's the most since Chris Lofton's 112 in 2004. Chris Lofton, for those who don't remember, ended up going to Tennessee, breaking a lot of Tennessee's three-point records as a top 5 or 6 really three-point shooter in the history of college basketball. One of the reasons Tubby Smith's tenure at Kentucky got really stale was he was missing out on kids just like that. Right. I don't think people forgave Tubby Smith for not recruiting Chris Lofton, because Lofton, on record, would have gone and played for Kentucky if they were to have offered him. He had a 48-point game in that tournament, 48, and that was the 4th highest scoring output of that event's 106-year history. Wow. He finished his career 5th in Kentucky high school basketball history in scoring, almost scoring 4,000 points in his career. And for that tournament, just in the Sweet 16 alone, was 19 to 34 from 3, which is over 55%. So he absolutely went scorched earth in that tournament, became like a Kentucky high school basketball folklore legend over there. And ever since Mark Pope took over, he's been finding three-point shooters. He just took 240+% three-point shooters in the transfer portal, in Kobe Brea from Dayton and Kirk Risa from West Virginia. And what better way to beef up that roster of a guy who just got done coaching one of only 4 teams in college basketball last year to shoot more threes than twos for the entire season than to get the 6'6" kid who just shattered the three-point shooting record book in the state of Kentucky.
4 schools right? That's basically 1%.
Yeah. Those are there were only 4 schools last year who shot more threes than twos.
I mean, really, it really is basically, it's just a shade over 1%. Because there's, 360-something D1 basketball playing schools.
362. BYU, Chattanooga, Princeton, and North Florida.
Wow. Look, I said earlier, disappointing news. I hope no one's angry. Some will be, and I'm not here to tell you how to feel, but
naturally,
I get it. This is a blow because and as David told us, and as you have been projecting too, this kid wasn't coming to like learn about college basketball and sit the bench. He was going to play. To what level, what degree, how often was he going to start? As a bench dude, don't know yet.
It's the luxury of having him.
And you made mention as well. Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio. Again, Matt, very well connected up there. I'll paraphrase the. Do you have the direct tweet still?
I can pull it up.
Well, Matt just talked about how Kentucky, Louisville, and Tennessee would now be amongst those schools because that's, quote, closer to home. But then there was a follow-up tweet that I think really illustrates more than anything what this kid is likely looking at.
And he said Trent Noah can play and has improved a ton even in the last year. Being a fellow 13th regioner, I think he is perfect to join Pope's squad, and I think he will. And Matt Jones basically is Kentucky basketball. That guy is about as in tune as anybody there.
Yeah, that's fair. And he really is. 13th regioner. That sounds like something out of the Hunger Games.
It does. It definitely sounds like, I guess, like an organization of people whose great-great-grandparents fought in the Revolution.
Something.
Has to be. A 13th regioner.
But that's your point, though. They don't break them up into divisions by school size. It's just
your region in Kentucky,
where you are in the state.
Massive tournament.
Yeah.
He broke records.
So you figured this, and David echoed this as well. Yeah. In fact, I think David went, you think? So it looks like Kentucky. And like I said, there are kids all over that state that dream of it. And if you can have some conversations and the new guy is interested in you and he's got room for you and it's not too late, this is what might happen. So I get it,
It's a bummer. I was excited to see him play here.
Well, and let's remember too, this is one of those like karma in the universe kind of moments, in my personal opinion, because did Cam Scott ask out of an NLI?
He did.
And was granted that. The universe gives, the universe takes. South Carolina benefited from a local kid who wanted to play here, and that things were just different for him. I know it's not apples to apples comparison in terms of their choices, but then realized if the opportunity at home is there, I want to take that opportunity. And that's where Trent Noah is today.
Yep.
I think these are so in that respect, they're basically the same things that are happening here. And now, obviously you're not going to go get a kid out of high school to replace him. If there are still kids in the portal, and to remind y'all, the portal closed in terms of you entering it. But if you've not yet chosen a school, you can still choose your school. So are there, these kind of shooters in the portal? I couldn't tell you, and I won't even try to tell you. I have no idea.
Been looking. It's kind of hard. I like to use the Athletics list of the top players that were in the transfer portal. As you can imagine, most of these fellas are taken, right? They're still out there. But I look at someone like a Trezerian White from UNC Wilmington, not too far away.
Right.
6'7", was a 39% three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. He's still in the transfer portal. He's not committed. The Athletic had him as number 85 player in the portal. Find that to be pretty interesting. You're looking at other big forwards like Cassian Pryor from South Florida. The Bulls were 2-4 before he was inserted into the starting lineup to make it a 5-out offense, and they went 21-2 afterwards and won the AAC. He was a big reason because of that. Shooting, not really sure, but he played a really good role in that offense. I could see him being a type of rotation player if you were to consider South Carolina. So there are some players out there. It's just going to be harder now to replace somebody like him in terms of what you're trying to fix, right? Yeah. Because three-point shooting goes off the board pretty quickly. Like I said about, a lot of CEOs in their companies, they've never said we have too much money or that I'm taking home too much money. College basketball teams have never said we have enough 3-point shooting. So finding a like-for-like replacement is going to be pretty hard in the shooting category, but maybe you can find somebody who's a good enough 3-point shooter with good size who can maybe add some other elements to your offense.
Well, let me ask you, and David mentioned this, so you're echoing it right now, but for those that didn't hear it, you mentioned the size, and it does feel like part of what's being lost here. Trent is 6'5". You just mentioned the kid at Wilmington 6'7". You're looking for that 3. This is not a 2.
A big wing.
Yeah, you're looking for a 3 here, so that you need somebody a little bigger.
Exactly, and somebody who can defend multiple positions too. And that's the thing too. Like I think the one thing that we didn't know about Trent Noah, because you can't watch it a lot in terms of watching his tape, like you can clearly see he can shoot, the lights out, but he wasn't guarding players that are SEC caliber at the Kentucky high school level, right? So seeing exactly how good he was defensively and how switchable he could be defensively is really hard to project. And you really wouldn't know that until you got to see him a lot here and in some scrimmage action and game action. But maybe with a couple of guys in the transfer portal like Trezerian White, all of this tape is going to be against D1 competition. UNC Wilmington actually played at Kentucky last year and beat them. So you have tape of him against somebody like Kentucky in SEC competition. How well can he defend multiple positions? Can he switch and be able to guard a point guard if a pick and roll comes up and you have to switch it, right? How much defensive versatility can he give you? That's kind of the thing now where if you are replacing a big wing with a big wing, it's not just 3-point shooting. There's those other elements that come in that you need to see exactly how well they're able to fit in.
I do like big wings.
I love big wings.
Public House has big wings.
They do. Yeah. Best wings in town, in my opinion. If I'm ranking, they've had the best wings that I've had in town.
Yeah.
Thirsty Fellow's a good second.
Yeah.
But
Thirsty Fellow has duck wings too.
They have duck wings?
Yeah.
There's no way it's on the menu because I would have ordered if they're on the
Maybe not all the time. I've had them there before though.
But they have duck wings?
Yeah.
Are duck wings good?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah. What were we talking about? Was there basketball in there?
I want to start drooling. We're going to make a mess over here. That sounds delicious.
We'll come back on the other side of the break before we delve too far deeply into our wing rankings, which could be a whole show's worth of stuff. Maybe this summer, Top 5 Friday. Already kind of feeling a Top 5 Friday on the local wing joint, so that could be fun. Our good friend Ben Portnoy will join us on the other side of the break, covering the business of college athletics. How close might we be to a settlement in a big lawsuit that would not only pay athletes some back pay for NIL, but perhaps reshape the college athletics landscape? That and more with Ben when the postgame show continues. 18 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. Welcome back into the postgame show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Again, Carolina baseball coming your way a little earlier than normal this afternoon. We'll be out of here at 5:45. Make way for Derek and Stewart. 6 o'clock first pitch from Rock Hill. Gamecocks taking on Winthrop. It is always a pleasure to have our good friend Ben Portnoy on the program. He is just back from the beautiful Phoenix area, at least beautiful this time of year, but pretty soon it's going to get really, really hot. But covering a lot of things going on around college athletics. How are you, sir? Did you play any golf while you were in Phoenix?
What's going on, guys? I did not get to break out the sticks, but hoping next time. As many times as I've been there in the last 6 months, you'd think I'd be able to play a little golf.
You have been out there a lot.
Next time.
Yeah, Phoenix.
I know.
It's becoming the epicenter of college sports, man.
It's just like we all expected, right? No, it's funny. I'd never been to Phoenix, but, the last 6 months, I think I've been out there 3 times now. So it's definitely an interesting spot, and, a lot going on for sure.
Yeah, Sky Harbor Airport is cool. I will say that much.
It is.
That's a nice airport. All right, let's jump into this. Let's start with House versus NCAA, and word beginning to come out now that a better than $2.5 billion settlement could be in the works, but really it's not the back pay that might be the most important part of this, Ben. As we all know now, this settlement is likely to include something that, I say something, bigger than that could potentially reshape what college sports looks like moving forward. What more are you hearing, A, about the likelihood of a settlement, and then, what kind of guarantees might be put into something that moves us forward rather than looking back?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of moving pieces here. I think there are a lot of people who are certainly optimistic about a settlement. I think that for both sides, there's reason to settle. But I think that, again, like anything in these discussions, it'll be done when the paper's signed. And I think that that's really important to know, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of optimism. This is, I was told that this was not the first time these two parties have met to discuss a settlement. This has kind of been an ongoing thing for a little while. But that said, I do think that, largely people are optimistic that there can be a settlement and that can be, at least a step toward some kind of resolution in sort of the chaos that we exist in right now. I think that that's been the biggest thing is that, a settlement here in the House case and kind of all that this means as far as athlete employment and sharing revenues that come in from the television contracts, like, it's not a one-size-fits-all fix, but and it's not necessarily the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's at least like a half step or a step toward that light. And I think that that's a big thing and sort of gives, I think, some people some hope that, we might get some resolution and some sanity in college sports at some time down the line.
If there is a settlement here, and it does lead to a few things, that there are some out there, Ben, saying that could then prompt Congress to be more willing to come together on something. I quite honestly have my doubts about whether or not that will take place. But are you hearing that? If this settlement happens the way that some would like it to, will that be a benefit in terms of something congressional too?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's hope that Congress would step in after you get some of to basically say that, hey, the NCAA is not going to get sued over this again. It gives a little bit of stability, at least for the time being, and over, frankly, the course of the last 10 years to basically say, hey, if you weren't in this bucket of people, starting in 2016, I believe, with the House case, that's suing the NCAA for lost NIL damages, that once the case is resolved, you're basically saying, hey, those people can't sue anymore, the people who fall in that bucket for the most part. It gives a little bit of stability to turn the conversation forward, like you said, to some kind of congressional resolution. Because I think that's the important point here is that, a settlement here doesn't necessarily provide protection for the NCAA moving forward. It basically just covers its back on sort of everything that's happened between the O'Bannon case and now. And I think that that's helpful, but again, it's sort of an important point. As far as Congress and what they would have to do, like, that's where I think the real answer is Congress going to give some kind of antitrust exemption? Are they going to find some kind of way to let athletes operate as like pseudo employees, but without actually qualifying them as employees under the IRS and things like that? I think all of that is still TBD. I think people are optimistic that Congress will step in, but the reality is it's election year. I think that for the most part. I think the general consensus has been that if the Republicans do control the House and Senate and potentially the presidency, like there's a pretty good shot that something could get passed. If the Democrats control it again, maybe less likely. So that's an oversimplification, but I do think that is an important point. And again, we're in an election year. There's a lot going on that have, far more wide-reaching ramifications than college sports. And I think to me, I'm a little hesitant to say, yeah, Congress is going to jump in and fix this, but I think people are optimistic after it's been a little bit dead on arrival for a few months at least.
And you alluded to one element about this that I think, in terms of just projecting the future of collegiate athletics and how we're talking about, revenue sharing and restricting player movement, is that angle of, college athlete employment status and the ability to maybe collectively bargain. And, what do you think, I guess, maybe is like the most likely outcome? Because schools are going to be, fight tooth and nail to not consider them employees, right? And avoid that big evil E word. But you mentioned something like, maybe pseudo employees. But what is probably maybe the most likely outcome in terms of how we classify the work and the labor that these college athletes put in?
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, I think that it's hard to look at. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert, despite as much time I spend looking at legal briefs these days. I do think that, and you look at this and you say, hey, these are all the things that student athletes are doing. These are the benefits they're getting. This is the money that they're generally bringing in. I think it's hard not to look at them and say, in the common sense, and say, hey, people are employees. Now, that said, I do think that if you're going to call them employees, that creates a whole host of issues. It's, overtime, it's workers' comp, things like that, right? Things that get really, really in the weeds and end up costing schools a lot of money. Now, if that's the case, I think that's why you see a lot of groups saying, hey, we want to find a way to work with Congress to pass basically an antitrust exemption, which a lot of sports do have, the NFL, NBA, et cetera, granted in slightly different ways, that say, hey, we're going to let student athletes or athletes in the schools and the networks and whoever collectively bargain, but we're not going to call them employees in the eyes of the law. And I think that allows some wiggle room for universities, I think, to, first of all, be able to afford the bills that are probably coming. And I think, frankly, it allows athletes, too, to have some wiggle room as well and say, I know people always sort of throw the sort of overhanging thing here is, hey, if athletes are employees, they're going to get fired by their coaches and all of that. And, I think a little bit of that's sort of unfair and I think is a little bit ridiculous, but I do think there is something to be said about, if you make it an employee and employer relationship, I think you do see, our kids going to get cut in the middle of the season in the way that they are in the NFL. How much does it change the recruiting process, right? Things like that I do think have very significant and sort of ramifications on a thing like college sports and an entity like college sports. So I do think that some sort of middle ground is the hope for everyone, but again, that will take congressional action, and I still kind of have my doubts about whether that's going to happen.
Ben, last thing for you. Got about 2 minutes left here before the hard break. And staying with this subject, last week UAB's football team joined athletes.org, and I know you've spoken with the folks that run that group. How big a deal is this, and what schools might be next?
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, look, Trent Dilfer, kind of the head coach at UAB, kind of spearheaded this and said, hey, I want you guys to look at this and think about it, and if you want to get involved, let's do it. But obviously they did, and I think that athletes.org is one of these organizations that has kind of positioned itself to say, hey, at some point there's probably going to be collective bargaining where we as athletes or, as an entity, college sports, are going to have to find a way to basically talk about all the big issues, sit down, break them down, figure out who's getting what percentage of what. In the same way, right, that the NFLPA or the NBAPA and all of those unions do. And I think athletes.org has said, hey, we're going to do the groundwork now to be in a position to be at the table to help guys do that. Now, what comes next, we'll see. I think there's a lot of discussion about what other schools might be involved in something like this. I think that, it's fair to assume that there will be other schools that do become a part of this. And, if Power 4 schools start coming and that gets things off the ground there, I think you can see a little bit of groundswell of support. But a little bit wait and see. But I do think it's an important piece. And I think it's another piece of sort of organizing athletes in some capacity, not necessarily a union,
right.
But in getting everyone on the same page at least.
Well, I think that's going to be one of the only answers is some form of this. I mean, it may not be labor management in terms of the union, but something like that. So we'll see. Good stuff as always, sir. Appreciate you, and let everybody know I tossed it out to Ben to come hang out with us for a bit because that's about 10% of what I'd like to ask him today. So we'll get you to come sit down and hang out with us here sometime real soon. But safe travels wherever you're heading next, and try to play some golf too. All right.
Sounds great. Appreciate you guys. See you guys soon.
That is Ben Portnoy of the Sports Business Journal. B Portnoy 15 to follow along on Twitter. We'll recap the breaking news around the Gamecocks, and The Athletic has put out its post-spring top 25 in college football. Gamecocks didn't make it, but there's a surprise in the top 10 that might make Gamecock fans unhappy. We'll discuss when the postgame show continues.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with a few accidents to report to you that are causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. But first, we'll start with some road construction that's causing some pretty decent traffic backup. That's going to be on I-20 eastbound between US 601 near exit 92 and US 521 on exit 98. The left lane is completely closed on that road, expected to clear at 5 p.m. today. Expected. In Richland County, we have an accident on Brookfield Road at Decker Boulevard, as well as one on Farming Creek Road at US 76. Those are causing some decent traffic backups. We also have two in Lexington County, one on I-26 eastbound at I-20 and exit 107B, and one on 26 westbound at St. Andrews Road exit 106.
Let's talk a little college football. I'll give you the quick breaking news again, though, and we'll do this a few more times for you. South Carolina basketball news. Trent Noah from Harlan County, Kentucky, has been released from his national letter of intent today. He hopes to pursue opportunities closer to home. The feeling is that he is going to be joining Coach Mark Pope's roster at UK. That is not a done deal as of yet, but those seem to be the prevailing reports from the Commonwealth. Good kid. Had been committed to Carolina since last fall, but really his senior basketball season, I think a lot of people went, oh, okay. And the one person who wasn't going, oh, okay, was John Calipari. But this kid wanted to play for Kentucky, and Coach Pope went, oh,
okay.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's what's happening.
Now, it would be the funniest thing ever if Louisville scooped in and ended up stealing.
As long as it's not Tennessee, because then Carolina, I think Carolina fans will be forgiving. Because, again, Carolina had this happen for them with Cam Scott.
Makes sense.
So, there again, the karma, as I said earlier, the universe, again, it gives, it takes. Mm-hmm. Cam Scott, released from an NLI at Texas, coming home. This young man would like to go home and play for UK, where he wanted to play. But if it's Tennessee, he'll get booed mercilessly.
Oh, my God. Yes.
If it's Kentucky, there'll just be a smattering of boos when he visits Colonial Life Arena whenever that day comes. I guess it won't be next season, but the season after. But if it's Tennessee and you see him twice, then it will be
ugly,
relentless.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm so confident that he's going to be playing at Kentucky that if he ends up playing at Louisville, I will come in here dressed as the Louisville Cardinals.
Can you get Prize Picks insurance on that if you're so confident?
Yeah, I'm sure I can. And you know what? They probably would deny it just because it is so close to being it's happening. But if that happens, I will come in here dressed as a Cardinal. I'll find a Cardinal mascot outfit
minus
somewhere.
900 to go to Kentucky.
More like minus 9,000 at this point. Yeah, this is almost as much of a shoe-in as possible. But I will dress as a big red bird if that ever happens. If Louisville does the funniest thing on the planet, and that's steal him from Kentucky.
That would be something, but we'll see. In the meantime, let me read this top 10 first. Should I read the top 10 first, or should we allude to your poll first? Because this will work hand in hand. But I feel like it's better if I read the top 10, because if you do the poll first, then the giveaway is there.
Yeah. If you do the poll first, the giveaway is there. But when you get to the punchline here, when you get to the sweet spot, the payoff here, you almost have to introduce it like it's a starting basketball lineup, where the most important nickname or the best fact about the person is said last before you say the person's name.
All right, I'm torn now. It's live radio, so all right, here. I'm just gonna give you this is Ari Wasserman's top 10 post spring. There's a whole top 25. Carolina didn't make it, and Clemson's number 18. So I'm just going to give you the top 10 for now and keep things short and sweet. Number 1's Ohio State. Number 2 is Georgia. I'd flip them, by the way. Georgia's loaded, man. But whatever, it's cool.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Tough.
It's a post spring top 25, so I'm not really here for how dare you. Number 3 is Oregon. Number 4 is Texas,
Tejas.
who, by the way, will be in the Southeastern Conference.
So Ari's projecting a Texas-Georgia SEC championship.
If it worked out that way.
Which would feel wrong.
Because we're going divisionless. We're going the top 2 finishers next season into the SEC championship game in Atlanta. Number 5 is Notre Dame because, why not?
Why not?
I mean, it's Number 6 is Mississippi.
I'd switch those two. I would swap.
I don't know enough about what Notre Dame has coming back. Number 7 is Alabama. And he says it may be jarring not to see Alabama in the top 5. But, again, you probably know why. Number 8. And, yes, number 8. Missouri.
Voted most hateable coach on the SEC slate for South Carolina by the fans out of 107.5 The Game poll. The one, the only, the hated, Eli Drinkwitz.
Ari asks, is Eli Drinkwitz in the process of building something special at Mizzou? The Tigers are coming off an 11-win season, including a victory over Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, and made some moves in the offseason that should make them really exciting in the fall. I'll come back around real quick. Number 9, Michigan. Number 10, Miami. This has to make Carolina fans just – and it's not because Ari picked them or that they don't deserve it. It's that it's happening. And again, Eli has had Carolina's number for whatever reasons. Maybe he is this good a coach. It's still baffling to me. And now, almost – I'm snapping my fingers out of nowhere. He seems to have, just raced right past Kentucky. And I know last year was not what Carolina fans wanted, and Carolina's had opportunities to beat Missouri and just can't find a way to do it right now. But this one, and look, not just Carolina fans, Tennessee fans, Arkansas fans, a whole bunch of fans. Again, Kentucky. Hell, Florida at this point. I mean,
Especially Florida.
Missouri? Really?
Is that how people, I guess, at least in this market, felt when they won back-to-back SEC East
Yeah,
titles?
because Carolina was so good then, man. Carolina was so good.
It was annoying.
And that game.
It was so annoying.
That Connor Shaw off the bench game with the pass to Bruce, and then the kid doinked it from 2 yards out, and Carolina won in Como. That was a top 10 matchup, man. But Coach Pinkel, they went. Carolina went 6-2 3 straight years, and in 2 of them, Gary Pinkel's teams went 7-1. And in one of them, their only loss that 13 game, that was the home loss to South Carolina. And then it just then it kind of fell off for them. Gary did such a great job recruiting Texas. But again, that was the old Big 12 days when you had more now you have access to Texas again, if you will, and they came in with A&M. But now Eli's recruiting again. But it's got to be mind-numbing to a lot of Southeastern Conference fans that this is happening. And then at the same time, you have to ask yourself, to go to your point, should it be? Because it is, but should it be that Missouri is where they are in football? Because you look around the conference, as you well know, and you're like, well, Arkansas puts more into football than you do. South Carolina puts more into football than you do. Both Mississippis do, and I realize Ole Miss is up there right now. Tennessee certainly does. Mm-hmm. Florida certainly does. Hell, even Kentucky is these days. What is it that Eli is doing? Don't know. I'm doing the shoulder shrug here. Don't know. But he is, man. The poll, I think, speaks for itself.
50%. Of the 180. So 90 of the 180 people that voted in that poll, out of all the SEC football coaches on the SEC schedule, picked Eli Drinkwitz as the most hateable.
And let me be clear, for those of you who may be confused by my tone or my level of incredulity here, I'm not incredulous over the fact that Ari has put Missouri in the top 10.
Because it makes sense.
That's what I'm saying. Well. It's justifiable. There's no doubt about that. It's just, what? How did this happen?
It's annoying because they punch above their weight class. If you're Missouri, I think there's a reasonable expectation to be ranked every year or be in the top 25. If you get above 15, you had a hell of a season.
Yeah.
them to be like habitually in the top 10, as if Brad Smith's just walking through that door, is pretty annoying. Like it is annoying, and there are some annoying qualities to Eli Drinkwitz that add to that fire a little bit to make it more annoying. But Missouri being good in the SEC, I've always found annoying ever since they got into the SEC because they ain't from here.
Right.
So it does.
I think that's
there's
what it
an
is.
element. There's the element if you ain't from here.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little more annoying than it already is.
LSU 14, by the way, Tennessee 15, A&M 17, and I think that was it, right, for the SEC? Yeah, That was it. So check it out at theathletic.com. Speaking of The Athletic, they have other prognostications about the United States women's basketball team. Want to tell you all about those because one thing said about one local person was pretty cool. Be right back. 11 minutes in front of 5 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. We're about an hour away, a little less, from Carolina baseball. We get an early start tonight from Rock Hill. Gamecocks and Winthrop, 5:45 airtime, 6 o'clock first pitch. Later this weekend, it's Mother's Day. You slacking on a gift? Shame on you. Of course, I kind of might be as well.
I may or may not have found out that it's this Sunday.
Did I say that out loud? Don't worry, though. 107.5 The Game has your chance to send Mom to the beautiful Evergreen Lakeside Resort, plus a family 4-pack of passes to Stone Mountain Park. Go to 1075thegame.com's Facebook page to qualify. The Braves in town this weekend, too? I think they are.
Are they?
I think they are.
Their West Coast road trip conclude?
Yeah, they got Boston for a couple. Yeah, yeah. No, you know who's in town this weekend? The New York Metropolitans.
Oh, that's right, because they're on Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah.
How about that?
I'm a big Mets fan. I love the Mets.
Yeah, I know you love the Mets.
You know I don't
You're
like?
big Mets guy.
I don't like the Phillies.
Well,
I don't like the Mets either.
good thing it's a good year to hate the Phillies, because the Phillies are having a down. No.
Thanks, Elijah.
Yeah. Well, at least they're not the best team in base.
Thanks, Elijah.
Okay. Well, I'm out. I'm sorry. I got nothing for you.
Chantel Jennings of The Athletic has put out her projection of the 12 women that will be representing the United States in the Olympics this summer. She has them broken down into the veterans, the locks, in the fold, and what she calls the youngins. Good for her.
Very Southern.
I'll try to do this real quick here. Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner, she calls the vets. Diana Taurasi's 42. She's still playing pretty well.
She is.
So she's probably going to make it. But here's what I wanted to tell you all about was the locks. These are the ones that are at, because I guess the two veterans, Taurasi and Griner, are probably going to make it, she says, with veteran presence. May not have a huge role, but they are the leaders.
Think Larry Bird on the dream team.
But of the locks, first player, Asia Wilson. At 27, Chantel Jennings writes, Wilson is currently the best player in the world. Her ability to get a bucket at will, out-rebound anyone, even if there's a size differential, and defend at an elite level makes her a no-brainer. In her second Olympics, she'll be relied upon to be even more of a leader and to cultivate team chemistry. If Wilson can help bring some of the togetherness, camaraderie, and joy to Team USA in the same way she has for the Aces, that could be the key. Best player in the world.
That's high praise.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Wonder if there's ever been someone from Columbia that has been called that, like, at any point in time. You know, I mean, this town can churn out some good athletes. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But a best in the world.
Best in the world.
I'm trying to think of maybe what the closest has been.
I mean.
From a national standpoint, in terms of I was like, oh, that person's from South Carolina.
Alex English is in the Hall of Fame, but there was never a point in his, amazing career where he was considered the best basketball player in the world.
You could say he partook on some of the best offenses in the world.
Yeah. He did, too. And again, he's in the Hall.
High-scoring teams.
Yeah.
Some very high-scoring teams.
He's in the Hall. Trying to think of who else. Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty cool. In the fold, she says one of them. It's the youngins. Aaliyah Boston. Since 2004, Olympic rosters have included either that summer's WNBA Rookie of the Year or the previous season's WNBA Rookie of the Year. This summer, it might have both. Leah Boston is the reigning Rookie of the Year. She was named an All-Star. She won't, again, Chantel says Boston likely won't get a ton of minutes in France, but that's not really the point. By gaining Olympic experience, Boston sets the table to become the featured big in waiting behind Griner, Wilson, and Stewart when they depart the team. She also goes on, and I've only got a few seconds here, so I won't read the whole blurb. She thinks Caitlin Clark is going to make the team. And I think for a lot of reasons, there will be pressure on Team USA to include Caitlin Clark. Let's face it, she's a marketing juggernaut. It's not hard to generate attention for the U.S. men's and women's basketball teams in the Olympics, but the extra attention that Caitlin might provide, I think, would be a big deal for NBC. It could be a big deal for selling jerseys. All of those things matter. And let's face it, she's really good. The one thing that Chantel says is simply that she has not been with the senior national team yet, and she hasn't even played an official regular season game with Indiana as of yet. But I got a hunch when you got those spots, kind of like you mentioned the dream team, it's kind of like Leitner on the dream team.
Yep.
Like, you know what? Let's go ahead and see what the kid can do. Headlines of the day. More on the couple of big Gamecock stories for you, and we'll get you ready for baseball, plus a drive around the SEC. All that's coming up.
Yeah, that USA women's basketball Olympic team, not going to lose much, if any. But I was able to lose a decent bit of weight with my friends at Columbia Secret for weight loss, and it was a lot easier than I thought. Look, I didn't have this massive goal to try to reach, but I had a goal, right? And my friend Paul Grant at Columbia Secret for weight loss was able to help me get to where I'm doing a lot of things better. I'm sleeping a lot better. I'm more cognizant of the food I'm putting into my body. I have a better organization on when and how much I'm able to eat and do a lot of portion control. And it's helped me shed over 20 pounds in just the last month. And they can help you out too. There's no secret pills. There's no shots. Nothing like that. Just a plan, resources, and a team that is willing to help you exceed your potential. To learn the secret of losing up to 1 pound of unhealthy fat per day and start your own success story, call 803-824-4210. Results may vary. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some pretty decent traffic delays this afternoon. We do have some road construction that is causing some issue. That's got a left lane completely closed on I-20 eastbound between US 601 and exit 92 and US 521 near exit 98. We have an accident over, it looks like in Lexington County on I-26 eastbound over at the St. Andrews Road exit. That's exit 106. That's causing some significant traffic backup. The right lane is completely blocked. We also have one on Brookfield Road at Decker Boulevard. We also have a couple of accidents in Lexington County at 26 West at St. Andrews Road and one on Pilgrim Church Road at Catawba Trail.
And we did have a little breaking news to get to today when it comes to Carolina basketball. Welcome in. It's the final hour of the postgame show as well. Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you for being with us. Let's start with Coach Lamont Paris's team losing one of their more prized recruits today, Trent Noah, a three-star shooter from Harlan County, Kentucky, has announced that he has requested and been granted a release from his national letter of intent. This afternoon, he released this statement. It reads as follows. To begin, I would like to express my gratitude to the South Carolina basketball staff and fan base for embracing me as a Gamecock. After much thought, prayer, and extensive conversation with my family, I requested and was granted a release from my national letter of intent with the University of South Carolina. I'll be reopening my recruitment with hopes of pursuing basketball opportunities closer to home. I sincerely appreciate Coach Paris's genuine investment in me, both on and off the court, and his compassion and professionalism during this process. Please respect my decision. Thank you. He had committed to Carolina over schools like Dayton, Stanford, Western Kentucky, Seton Hall, but that was last fall. And so he played his whole senior year. He got a lot better. As Elijah said, he led his team into the state finals. There's only one level of basketball in Kentucky, and it's called high school basketball. This kid can shoot, and he dreamed of playing for Kentucky. John Calipari was not interested in him. It's that simple. There was no interest, and that's been reported. Now it's being reported by Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio, who's very well connected, that Kentucky is very interested. Louisville and Tennessee apparently are as well. You heard, me read in his statement, he wants to be closer to home. Matt has also put out that the kid did get better, has improved a lot, and that Kentucky is the likely landing spot for Trent Noah. This makes a lot of sense. It's disappointing. As Elijah and I have pointed out, it can't be too disappointed if you're a Carolina fan because you got a kid that's in the same, or at least a very similar boat with Cam Scott getting out of his signed NLI with Texas because he wanted to come back and play at home. And that's what this young man wants to do, too. So as I mentioned earlier, for those of you who believe in any kind of karma, the universe giveth and the universe taketh away.
The NLI gods are at work.
And so this is, I don't want to call it a wash, but in some ways maybe it is. But regardless, that's the exact same scenario that unfolded with Cam because Texas really wanted him. And I think he really liked Texas. But when the opportunity was there that maybe wasn't, or it was different. Let's again. That's why that's where there's the rub here. This is not apples to apples. Or maybe it's like Granny Smith to Macintosh, as I like to say sometimes. Maybe it is apples.
Yeah.
But Cam, I think saw a different kind of opportunity at Texas initially, and then realized because Frank's staff recruited him too.
Yep.
And then Lamont's staff did. But then that was like an unknown, whereas with Texas, that was more of a known commodity. And let's face it, that's a fine, fine school in a fine, fine town. But once you realize, like, oh, I want to do that, then you ask and see what happens. And so Cam was able to do it, and now Trent is doing the same thing. Again, the reasons that I say, not quite the same apple to same apple is that Mark Pope went, yeah, okay. You can play for Kentucky, and I would like you to play for Kentucky. Would you like to play for Kentucky? Yes, sir, I would.
He says, oh, Local 6'6" kid who breaks three-point shooting records in the state. I like my teams to shoot lots of three-pointers.
And I want to be clear here because we're on the radio and we're doing these things. I'm not telling you that Mark Pope was calling and tampering with a signed athlete. That's not what I mean when I say that, okay? I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying. The point is there's interest, and you can find out through just like Cam Scott did. Is there interest? Is it mutual? What can we do here? And that's how this stuff works. That's the way it's always worked.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think there's anything nefarious here. And if a kid dreams of playing for Kentucky, as thousands of young men every year in the state of Kentucky do, and the dream can be fulfilled, hey, who am I to stand in your way? And that's what Lamont said, too. Lamont gets it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so now, and Elijah had a few names of some potential threes that could still be in the portal that fit what Lamont's looking for, 6'5" to 6'8", a shooter, a defender. And as I think one of the great things you pointed out too, not just a defender, a three in today's college basketball has to defend at the top and the bottom.
Yeah,
and at points in between.
You're not just guarding small forwards, right? Yeah, we're getting position.
This isn't straight man basketball anymore.
Nope, you got to be able to be switchable. Is what I like to say. Be switchable, and that's kind of I guess maybe what the target might be now,
right?
In terms of filling that spot.
So all the best to Trent Noah. Again, if he goes to Tennessee, that it could be a different story in terms of how Carolina fans feel about him. They'd probably prefer him to go to Louisville, as you mentioned earlier.
Because that could be funny. That would be really funny. Then you can laugh at Kentucky's expense.
Right, because then you can laugh at Kentucky and then have him play in another conference, and you're unlikely to ever see him.
Kentucky to lose that kid to an arch rival would be really funny.
By all accounts, Lexington is where he'll be plying his trade for the next couple of years. But good luck to the kid. And like I said, for Carolina fans, you got one that way, and now you lost one that way. So
John Denver did, write a song about some days being diamonds, some days being stones.
Look at you. I did not think you would pull out a John Denver.
Oh, I'm a John Denver enthusiast. Lifelong, baby. Sometimes the hard times won't leave me alone.
That's good.
That's an all-timer. Might get that tattooed on me one day. Good words to live by.
All right. There you go. Goals, man.
Yeah.
Everybody needs goals.
That's right.
Last night in the NBA, the New York Knickerbockers beat the Indiana Pacers 121-117. Yours truly tuned into some of that game. I did not tune in last night to see the Timberwolves just smash the Denver Nuggets without Rudy Gobert. 106-80 in Denver. The T-Wolves up 2-0 in the best of seven, and they won them both in Denver. For the Knicks, I got to applaud Dante DiVincenzo, who gave the best basketball/soccer flop of the NBA postseason so far. I thought, honestly, that he had been shot. But instead, I realized that he was faking it.
The rafter snipers are pretty active.
Yeah, somebody was up in the rafters of the Garden. But he did the full body, head back, arms up. And all he did, who did he bump into?
Miles Turner.
Miles Turner, thank you.
Got the call.
And he did. He got the call. And I was like, dude, and then I won't go into the details, but I was telling Elijah a story of like the German soccer team of the 94 World Cup. Like those dudes would get a feather would land on them. And you'd have thought they all had just been galoolied, But way to go, Dante, because that was a crucial point in the game.
Changed the game.
But that was a good one.
That'll be a good series.
Should be.
That'll be a really good series.
Should be.
The Pacers, they may not do much defensively, but they are really good at scoring the basketball and doing it fast.
Nobody wants to really. I need a good quality NBA playoff game has about 3 collective minutes of good defense. That's all it should have. Otherwise, it should be 45
of it against the.
It should have 45 minutes of scoring your tail off, and then 3 minutes of defense. Last minute of the first half, and 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. That's it.
I like it.
That's it.
That's your ideal NBA game.
Yeah. Final score 184-179.
Preston and I did have a really good conversation what your ideal score is in games, and for mine, for an NBA game. I want it to be in the one teens.
Yeah, they should get. I was going to say they should get into the 120s. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Listen, It was remarkable to me when I was a kid when an NBA team didn't score 100 points.
Well, that was the 80s, right?
Yeah.
The 80s
they
was
just
the
played.
highest.
That's when it took me years to realize what the hell is illegal defense? Because they used to call them like illegal defense, basically because when somebody stretched too far, like past the hash mark or something. Because
it basically eliminates a traditional zone defense.
Yeah, you can't play zone.
There's
but,
7-foot behemoths.
You know, but I'm like, who comes up with the term? That's how much they didn't want teams to defend. Is they came up with a term called illegal defense. It's like the NFL's legal tampering. It's different, obviously, but it's like legal tampering. Like, and then again, what is illegal defense? Should again, I'll use the Galooly term. If you have like a weapon in your hand and you're going up and literally just bashing someone on the knee, and then stealing the ball, like that should be illegal defense.
Like what happened to poor Nancy Kerrigan? That's illegal defense.
Yes, that's getting Galooly literally in that case.
Galooly, yeah, that's right. I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, so
quite literally. Illegal defense.
But anyway, tonight, the Cavaliers and the Celtics, game one of the East semis, and the Mavs and Thunder in game one of a Western Conference semifinal series. Yes. Those games start at 7 and 9:30, respectively. Let's see. Speaking of the NBA, Victor Wembanyama has been unanimously chosen as the NBA Rookie of the Year. Of course, playing for the San Antonio Spurs. He's the 6th unanimous Rookie of the Year in the last 40 years. The other 5, Ralph Sampson, he was good.
Pretty good.
David Robinson, he was good.
Pretty good.
Blake Griffin, he was good.
Pretty good.
Damian Lillard.
Pretty good.
And Karl Anthony Towns.
Wow.
Mentioned the Admiral winning it. Tim Duncan in 98 also won the Rookie of the Year award, but he was not unanimous. So there you go. Now all they need to do is get some other players around him and become a good team.
I will say, so the funniest thing that occurred when my dad came and visited a few weeks ago, because this man has not watched the NBA in well over a decade. And he'll be the first one to tell you that he's proud he hasn't watched NBA in well over a decade. But I said, Dad, have you ever heard of Victor Wembanyama? Who's that? I'm like, oh, we're going to carve out some time. So I, turned on the TV, opened up the YouTube app, and I showed this man who has never seen a 7'4" player dribble between his legs, play on the perimeter, shoot threes, and block shots like a madman. Watched an hour of his highlights, and the only noises that came out of his mouth were, oh, wow, and some slight chuckles. I've never seen a human being more amazed. It's like the scene in Signs when the alien walks by that house in Brazil and all the children start screaming. It's kind of like that.
Wembanyama played in 71 of the Spurs' 82 games, 21.4 points, 10.6 rebounds. So there you go, double-double as a rookie.
Pretty good.
3.9 assists for a big, 3.6 blocks, that's expected, 1.2 steals per game. The last player, I don't know if you know this or not, so I'm going to ask you.
Okay, trivia time.
The last player to average 20 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks in a single season, not a rookie season, in any season, was who?
Would that be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Shaquille O'Neal in 2000 when he won the MVP.
Did not know that. That is fascinating.
Kareem's that's a very educated guess there. But the last guy to do it, and Kareem may have done that. I don't know if Kareem ever did it or not. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But Shaq, 24 years ago, the last guy to do what Wembanyama did this year. And Wembanyama, again, is a rookie on a bad team.
Yes. They're going to be in the lottery. They might be able to get him a good complimentary player. And very soon, we're going to be talking about him at this time on a pretty consistent basis.
It's going to be fun to watch.
He's a freak.
And he'll be playing for France this summer?
Yeah.
So that's cool.
And that's going to be scary.
Yeah, that's cool. And those teams are all going to give America, if they see him. I don't know what the schedule looks like, but
they're not in the same group as America, thankfully. So if they do see him, they'll be in the knockout.
They'll be in the medal, or at least in the if not the medal. Well, I guess that's kind of the medal round, right? Once you get to the knockout phase.
Once you get to the last 4, that might be considered medal round.
Okay. That'll be fun. But congratulations to Victor Wembanyama. And finally, the Atlanta Braves have announced that Tyler Matzik is on the 15-day IL with elbow inflammation. So another knock for the Braves bullpen after a very rough week for the Braves. Atlanta has the Red Sox tonight. Cutter Crawford goes for Boston. Ronaldo Lopez takes both these guys have ERAs under 2 so far this season. Game starts tonight at 7:20. in Atlanta. Come back on the other side of the break. And by the way, that is our Integrated Media headlines of the day, brought to you by Integrated Media for all your home theater, entertainment, and home security needs. 803-948-8327. No job too big, no job too small. And I would seriously tell you to consider an amazing outdoor system from Integrated Media. Speaking of the outdoors, they typically play football outdoors. And Shane Beamer made some indoor news about his outdoor football team. I'm trying to do it right.
A for effort.
Thanks. I'll give it to you when the postgame show continues. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Again, Carolina baseball coming your way in about a half hour's time. Not even that, less than that. And we'll have a quick drive around the SEC before we make way for Derek and Stuart and the Gamecock Radio Network. So Shane Beamer is taking the tour of the state, the welcome home tour, he calls it, visiting locales all across South Carolina, talking Gamecock football. And last night, while not shocking news, should I just play this without setting it up? Do I need to tell people what it was, or should we just play the cut? Can I just play the cut?
Let's just play it for those.
Right, let's just play the cut. Here's what Shane Beamer said about one really important spot on the team.
Oh, I mean, I'll tell you guys what I told Lenoris and all the quarterbacks coming out of spring practice. Coming out of spring practice, Lenoris is our starting quarterback. But just like all of our positions, that we will continue to compete at all positions. So I told Robbie Ashford the moment I say that at a Gamecock Club event, the headline is going to be Beamer names Lenoris Sellers starting quarterback. Lenoris is the starting quarterback coming out of spring. And now, like I told Lenoris and like I told Robbie did a great job during spring practice along with our other quarterbacks. Lenoris did a great job, and I expect Lenoris to continue to compete and continue to earn that position as well. You guys know from being here, I mean, going into 2022, nobody thought that Nicky Mamori and DQ Smith were going to be starting safeties because we had two seniors that they were behind, and we got into week 2 and they became starters, so it's the same thing. We don't all of a sudden name someone, Debo Williams, as our starting linebacker coming out of spring practice, but he needs to have a great summer to continue to be the starting linebacker, so that's where we are. And I had those conversations with those guys the Monday after the spring game.
So nothing shocking there, but at the same time, I suppose this makes it official, right? I mean, even if it's not on, as you and I said earlier, we in media and I'll say we as fans too. I mean, we're sports fans. We like depth charts.
Love depth charts.
I think coaches hate them, and again, Will Muschamp hated them so much that Will would put out the one like the week before the season. And half the dudes could have been injured, right? They could have been in like traction in the hospital in like week 10, and they're still on the depth chart because Will didn't change it. He hated them so much. Shane doesn't do that, thank God. But we don't have any kind of bona fide post-spring depth chart. Not sure we should at this point, because one of the refrains that you and I have been doing with our guests since spring ball is some form of, and we did it today with David Cloninger. What did we learn, and how much is there still to learn? And typically it's, not much and a lot, because it's all so new. But this is one of those things, and I think this does provide a point of maybe not stability is what I'm looking for, but something close to that. Like you need to know who your quarterback is. It just provides that level of comfort. Confidence,
in
perhaps.
that person.
Yeah, like that's the guy.
And at least, if you're a Gamecock fan, I think you should feel good that separation has been obvious enough for him to be able to claim that, right? Because it would I don't say it'd be a terrible look, but it would be unfortunate for Shane if we go into fall practice and Robbie beats out Lenoris Sellers, and then and then having to make that switch, and we're starting August 31st, non-injury related, Robbie Ashford starts the game against Old Dominion. It might raise some question marks. So the fact that, he felt good enough to put the starting name on Lenoris going into the summer, I think, means that he feels pretty confident that he'll end up being the quarterback to start the season. Yeah. Because, look, he could have easily said, they're in a really good battle right now. I'm excited to see what they do over the summer, how they develop, how they get better, how they get stronger. All the stuff. There's a lot of things he could have gone in terms of deflecting away from the question of who's going to be the starter. But he feels good enough that there's been some separation to publicly say that Lenoris Sellers is QB1 going into the fall. And
I don't know this, and even if we were to ask Shane, I don't know that he could give us an answer, because this is probably something that's more confidential between him and his players, but is there something along the lines of, Lenoris, you're the guy, and what that really means is now you have to work twice as hard to keep it. Yep. Something to that effect.
Could see that.
You know what I'm saying? Like Because I'm not here to suggest that Lenore's to go, oh, cool, I'm number one now. I don't have to do anything. He's not going to do that at all. But, there is a little added, not pressure, but, just hey, listen, you got to keep it. You got to go do it,
Fuel,
yeah.
maybe.
So there you go. Shane, cut number, where was I going here? Cut number 8, please, sir. Shane Beamer last night in Florence on how he thinks his team did through the portal.
I feel good. Coming out of spring practice, I think I talked about it publicly. There were some positions that depth-wise we weren't where we wanted to be just from a scholarship number standpoint. Offensive line was one of them. Not saying that we were not good on the offensive line, but just to be able to practice, having a certain number of guys on scholarship, we weren't there from a lineman standpoint. At receiver, we had some areas to address as well, and that was what we went into the portal. Those two positions were essentially primary needs and our primary, portal targets for us. I feel like we've addressed it well. Still not done. Obviously, the portal's closed, but if you're in the portal, you can still take visits as well. So that's still going on with us and other colleges as well. So we'll see how it finishes in the end, but I like where we are right now and like where we're headed also.
As you said, there's still some names that are out there if you're looking for something, how many slots they have available, things like that. Not really sure at this point. You won't turn anyone down if you believe they can help you. Let's put it that way. But it feels like by and large, things are pretty much done. And on that note, one more here, Elijah, please, cut number 11. This kind of goes to the point I just made. You're pretty much done, but you've still got to have that 85 scholarship number.
Good question. You can, I don't know if manipulate is the word. Certainly with name, image, and likeness is a different avenue now to be able to get creative if needed. We're really not, but that's something that some schools are from that standpoint. It's conversations that, conversations that we've had with guys as well. There's the rule that if you've graduated, you can still go in the portal if you're a graduate. So there may be a situation with that transpires as well. So we're very healthy from a scholarship number standpoint right now. Always trying to be creative, but we're capped by the scholarship roster number, but we're also capped by the overall roster number, meaning scholarships and walk-ons also. So that's a number that we're trying to balance also, that all that stuff will sort itself out before we start practice in August.
So that's probably a tricky question these days because, like you said, with NIL, some guys, if they make enough, maybe they decide to be a, walk-on. He didn't say that. That's me, Jay Phillips, saying that. But, and I liked how he was careful. Maybe manipulation isn't the right word, he said, but then again, Coach, maybe it is. You just don't want to say it.
Maybe he wants to phrase it as more creativity.
Yeah, manipulation has a negative connotation,
it
right?
Does.
Yes, creativity feels a little different.
Less nefarious.
But anyway, so we'll see. But there's some good stuff from Shane. But again, the big news is not so much shocking news, but just confirmed now through the head coach that Lenore Sellers is the number one quarterback heading into the summer. And I like how earlier you see that, by the way, now if I had a button here, I don't, you're in control of this show pretty much. I talk a lot, but you're in control. But what I need is a button. If you ever say in August and you call it fall camp, I'm going to have a button that like goes,
that's going to,
because I hate that.
That's why I'm always putting it air quotes.
I live in South Carolina and ain't nothing fall about August.
No. Well, anywhere in the southeast United States, they ain't nothing fall about August.
So, but I hear people, and I'm like, I can't stand the term fall camp because fall camp should be something nice, like with the leaves falling in November. Like, I'm going to fall camp. That sounds fun.
Or that should be how stuntmen go to train.
There you go, fall camp.
Yeah.
But August camp means 95 degrees, 70% humidity, and it's still 85 degrees at 9 o'clock at night.
My palms are sweaty thinking about that. It's gross.
We'll have a drive around the SEC, get you ready for the Gamecocks and Winthrop when the postgame show continues.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. We'll start here in Richland County. An accident at Forest Drive at Highway 12 and Percival Road is causing some traffic backup. We also have one on Hugh G. Street at Blossom Street here in our downtown. Got another one US 176 over at Broad River Road near I-20. And one near St. Andrews Road over on US 176 near Broad River Road. We also have an accident on US 378 near Atlas Road. And to end this with some good news, the accident that was on 26 East at St. Andrews Road near exit 106 has been cleared.
It is Drive Around the SEC time. Jay and Elijah with you for just a few more minutes. Again, Carolina baseball coming your way. Speaking of Carolina baseball, before we get into what's going on tonight, I want you to go to 1075thegame.com, register for the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. They're adding $25 to the pot every single game. If a Carolina guy hits a Grand Slam, you could win that cash. But you can't win if you don't enter.
That's a fact.
Go to 1075thegame.com and register for the Palmetto Citizens Grand Slam giveaway. The pot tonight, by the way, $1,175. This is worth your time, kids. This is worth your time.
It's a whole lot of Taco Bell.
There you go. Tonight, the Gamecocks are at Winthrop. Tyler Pitzer goes for Carolina, 4-1 on the season with a 4.31, 31 in the third, 44 strikeouts, 16 walks. Goes up against senior Connor Harris, a righty who has not pitched much at all. He has no record. He's got a 7.5 ERA, just 6 innings pitched, 4 walks and 3 strikeouts. I got a hunch both these teams use a lot of bullpen arms tonight. And Coach Kingston did kind of allude to that yesterday when he was with Elijah and me. So we'll see. Tyler Pitzer versus Connor Harris. By the way, Ethan Petrie needs just one more home run to tie Steve Pierce and Phil Disher and move into 7th place on Carolina's all-time list. 7th place, and that young man has not yet finished his sophomore season.
Pretty good.
He's good. Yeah, he's all right.
Hits a lot of home runs.
Yep. So if he does that tonight, there you go. And what if it's a grand slam? You could win $1,175.
You could profit off of this history.
If you're registered. Tonight in the Southeastern Conference, one game has already been canceled because of weather, and that is a flat-out cancellation. Kentucky at Xavier. Probably just as well for Kentucky that they don't go to a team with a, well, I mean, they're not a losing record, but might not hurt Kentucky's RPI, to play somebody that's farther down the list.
I was going to say they're probably not comparable to any of the teams that they play on the weekends.
No. But that game is canceled. That's what the SEC is telling us, which means it won't be made up. Queens out of Charlotte is headed to Knoxville tonight to take on the #1 Tennessee Volunteers. Carolina, again, at Winthrop. South Florida will be at Florida tonight. Florida needs this. Listen, Florida needs everything they can get. I mean, Florida is really, really close to not making the tournament, y'all.
Margin for error is slim.
Yeah. I mean, they're one game over 500. Ugh. I mean, they might not get to 30 wins, man.
I would say it's likely.
I mean, they got 7 games left. Are you going to go 6-1? I don't think so.
Doubt it.
I don't think so.
Not with the way they've played.
Auburn is at Georgia Tech. Rice will be at Texas A&M. Man, Rice used to be so good, and they're just not good anymore.
early 2000s.
Coach Wayne Graham, man.
Anthony Rendon ain't walking through that door.
No, they won a title. Louisville is at Vanderbilt tonight. Both these teams likely to make the tournament. But Louisville, really, both these teams are underwhelming this year. For two brilliant head coaches in Dan McDonnell and in Coach Corbin. Look, it happens.
Underachieving.
I'm not judging. I'm just observing. But Louisville's 13-11 in a good league, a very good league, a great league. Vandy is 11-13 in a great league, but neither one of them are where they thought they would be at the beginning of the season,
or where their yearly expectations are.
Yeah, because I think it's fair now for these fans. I mean, certainly these are two schools in Louisville and Vanderbilt that should expect super regional play
every year.
Yeah.
Regardless of roster turnover.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, before Dan got to Louisville, they had maybe been to one World Series, or maybe they had not. I don't know, but he's been to, 4 or 5 World Series? And Tim Corbin, Vandy was an afterthought, and Tim Corbin has made them, you could argue, they're still the premier program in the Southeastern Conference. I mean,
in terms of winning titles in the last decade and
just
cranking out major leaguers.
I mean, talent. Again, you could argue. I'm not telling you they are. I mean, Arkansas is great. Again, look at Florida struggling right now. That's about it, though. I mean, LSU is not where they're supposed to be, and LSU's been very good, obviously. But anyway, Alabama will go to Troy tonight. Northwestern State visits LSU. That's the lineup tonight for you across the Southeastern Conference. But keep an eye on Vandy, Louisville. Carolina fans, let me tell you, you might not like Tim Corbin, but Vandy needs to win. Vandy, as we speak, is number 27 in the RPI, so they've fallen a spot overnight. And those 3 wins over Vanderbilt now count for South Carolina as quad 2 victories, not quad 1. So you'd like to see Vanderbilt creep back into the top 25 of the RPI, not the polls, into the top 25 of the official NCAA RPI.
That's worth 3 quad 1 wins, right?
And that really, I don't know how much that's going to affect South Carolina when the committee looks at them. I think the committee will still go, well, you swept Vandy, and they're still going to give Vandy a lot of benefit of the doubt. But, what exactly that looks like when your margins are razor thin, I don't know. And for the Gamecocks tonight, whoever's pitching, first, second, fifth, whatever, you better win this game. You better win this game. We'll have some projections for you on tomorrow's show. Derek Scott's going to join us tomorrow as well, and you're going to join him in just a couple of minutes. Thanks to David Cloninger and Ben Portnoy. He's Elijah. I'm Jay. Enjoy the game.